Hey, Dave in the shop here again. We're going to make a project box for our Arduino. Stay tuned, I'll show you how. If you recall from a previous video, we prototyped out a Arduino project that used a load cell. The project worked out pretty well, but it was mounted on a piece of plywood. So since I found having the load cell to take different measurements pretty handy, I've decided to go ahead and put this into a proper box. So today we're going to take 1/8 inch plywood and make a custom box to fit our Arduino project. I'm going to take you step by step the process that I use, package up my Arduino project, and I'll take you from software design that I use all the way through gluing it up, finishing it up, and installing the electronics to get myself to a nice packaged, finished, usable project. I'm going to use the utility box designer that's located online at boxdesigner.connectionlab.org to design the basic box for this project. If you like this utility, please donate. That'll help keep this online and support bug fixes. As you can see, I set the box dimensions to 2 inches by 3 inches by 6. Material thickness is 0.1875 and notch length is 1/4 inch. So then I click the button to design it. And then what it's going to do is render out a PDF that I can use to import into the Lightburn software, where I can make my design changes and additions. My next step is to open up the Lightburn software and then import the PDF. Then I'll take that and start to make the adjustments that I want for my particular box. So in this case, I've rotated, then I'll start moving parts around. Then I'll get them into position how I'd like them to cut on the laser cutter. After I've got everything into position, and then I've set up the cutout holes for the Arduino cabling and the screen and the mounting holes to put everything together. Then I'm ready to install the plywood into the laser cutters and then set the focus height. And then I'm ready to start the cut. If everything on the laser is tuned correctly, then I'll get this part cut out in a single pass. You can see my video on how to check your laser to make sure that it's aligned properly, and I'll put a link on the screen to take you there. Now we've got our parts cut out, and we're ready to move on to assembly. Now the next step is to test fit all the parts, make sure they fit together. In my case here, it requires a little bit of filing so that the finger joints between the top and the back plate fit together properly. This is something that I can go back and adjust in the software to adjust the size of those holes a little bit. So in future box builds, I won't have to do the filing portion. Once everything fits together nicely, then I'm ready to move on to the glue up phase. A couple of the key components for building out this box to hold the Arduino is the mounting system for the Arduino. You certainly could drill holes to the back of the box and have screws on sticking out the back of the box, but I like to make these little plates. And in fact, what I've done is I've made 2 of them the shape of the Arduino, and then 2 of them for the shape of the little 711 amplifier board that's used on the for the load cell. So I'll glue those 2 together. That gives me some thickness that I can then my screws will then fit into, and then that'll of course be glued down into the bottom of the box for the placement of the board. Now I'm ready to start the glue up process for the box, and of course I'm using cyanoacrylate glue. I like the relatively thick version of that glue, and then of course I'll use the spray activator to instantly set the glue, and that'll make the build go much faster. I've got a little 1, 2, 3 block that I use on the milling machine, and I'm just using that as a square to make sure that the box goes together relatively square. You can use whatever square that you have that works for you. Alright, now a final test fit. Make sure that the faceplate goes on okay and everything looks good. Now, to mount the faceplate onto the box, what I need to do is cut some little posts that I can use that I'll glue inside the box, and then that'll match up to the holes that I burned into the front plate. So I can screw that front plate into position, but of course can obviously take it apart if I need to service anything that's inside. So using the bandsaw, I'm going to make a little small square, approximately 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch material that then I can use for those posts. Next, we'll get the measurement, how long the post needs to be, transfer that over to the dowel, and then set that up for cutting on the bandsaw. We'll make 4 of those little posts. Next, we'll glue the post in position. Again, just a little bit of the glue in the corner of the box. Position the piece, and then we'll come back and hit it with the spray to set it in place. And we'll do that times 4. While those parts cure, we'll move on to the mount for the Arduino. So the next step is we've got our markings that were actually put on by the laser cutter, and then we'll just use a 1/16 inch drill to drill the pilot holes to accept the little brass screws. Again, for future versions of this project, something I can do in the Lightburn software is adjust the size of the marking so that it burns a hole that'll be the perfect size for the pilot hole for the little brass screws. That will save a step next time. Using number 4 by 5/16 inch brass wood screws, I then mount the Arduino to the mounting plate. Then I just do a quick check to make sure that everything's going to fit in place. Next step is a little light sanding. I'm going to use 120 grit sandpaper just to knock off any rough edges and smooth out the box and get it ready for finishing. One last thing that I need to do is drill the holes for the screws that will hold the faceplate in place. Using a center punch, I'll just make a small indentation to help center the drill. Then I'll drill my pilot holes to accept the screws. If everything's good, my holes will match up with the holes in the faceplate. Next, it's time to glue in the mounting plate for the Arduino. Little test fit, make sure everything's good to go. And then we'll apply our glue to the box side. And then we'll use our rapid curing agent. We'll spray that to the bottom of the mounting plate, and then we'll stick the two together, being careful to make sure you got proper alignment, because it does happen instantaneously. Final gluing step is to go ahead and put in the mount board for the amplifier for the load cell. Now we're ready to apply some finish. Since this is not a furniture grade project, we just want a little bit of protective covering, and we're going to use linseed oil. One good coat should do it. We'll get that. Oh! Well, yeah, I do make mistakes sometimes in the shop. So that's the reason I have a replaceable top for my workbench, a little section that once it gets goofed, I can pull that out, cut a little piece of masonite, and then I'm good to go again. Now, with all my parts covered in linseed oil, I'll let this dry for a few hours. Now we're ready to start fitting all of the parts and pieces into the box. As you recall, we built this on a piece of plywood, so we're going to have to cut the cable that goes to the load cell in order to fish it through the cable gland that's mounted on the box. So we'll tin the wires, and you can see the cable that's now coming into the inside of the box, and we'll tin those wires and we'll solder all of this together. The other approach that I could have taken was to desolder the cable from the board, fish the cable through the cable gland, and then resolder to the board. For some reason, I decided to just cut the cable and then solder it all back together. Now that everything's soldered together, we're ready to screw down all of the board. So we've got to make a couple of little quick pilot holes for the amplifier board for the load cell. and then we'll screw that in place. And then we'll put our screws back in place for the Arduino board. Now we'll make a small hole for the momentary push button that goes onto the faceplate. And now we're ready to mount the LCD display panel onto the faceplate of the box. I'll use some very small machine screws to hold the faceplate into place. Now we'll put the push button in place and put the nut on it. And with everything mounted in place, we're ready to give it a quick test, make sure all the electronics are still working properly. So let's plug in the power, and we'll see the display light up and it's initializing and everything looks like that's working. Give it a quick pull test and we see that it's taking the measurement. We are good to go. Thanks for joining me on this Arduino project box build. I'm Dave in the shop. Please remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next video.